Oh, my silly girl is washing dishes at her mother-in-law's. My husband was laughing at the corporate party, but he didn't know yet what surprise awaited him at home. Hi, my dears. Put aside your chores for a minute. I want to tell a story that will help you look at your loved ones in a new way. Right where you're watching us from, we wish you a pleasant listen. Oh, my silly girl is washing dishes at her mother-in-law's. Paul burst out laughing loudly, scanning his tipsy gaze over the hushed colleagues. Can you imagine, with a summa cum laude from Yale and in finance, too, and she turned into a homemaker? So what? That's right. A woman's place is at home, cooking stew and doing laundry. The restaurant Lighthouse buzzed with music and conversations. Vintage crystal chandeliers preserved from the 1950s cast a soft light on the starched tablecloths. The corporate party, in honor of the 30th anniversary of the founding of the bank Stability, was in full swing. Glasses of bohemian crystals sparkled. Waiters in starched shirts darted between tables carrying appetizers and drinks. And at the center of attention, as always, was Paul Stephen Warner, the senior accountant with ambitions for financial director. Yes, exactly, Paul continued, flushed from the bourbon he'd drunk. You know how I trained her. No beauty salons for her, no girlfriends. She greets me from work, hands me my slippers. He laughed at his own joke, looking around at his colleagues for approval. The women exchanged awkward glances. The men smiled tensely. During the Christmas holidays, everyone tried to be kinder to each other, but Paul had clearly crossed all boundaries. Paul, but they say your Emily helps you with reports, cautiously noted Mary Peterson from the planning department, a woman of the old school who had worked in finance since the Reagan era. I heard she graduated with honors in economics, in the 80s still. Back then they really taught, not like now. Who says? Paul instantly tensed up, his eyes narrowed. Nonsense. She's about as good in economics as a pig in oranges. She only knows how to make chili and burgers, and even that doesn't always turn out. He took a big swig of bourbon, and with the reports, maybe I explain things to her sometimes. She's interested. His new Samsung phone vibrated for the third time that evening. Emily flashed on the screen. Paul irritably dismissed the call and demonstratively turned the phone screen down. Calling again. Wants me home. He rolled his eyes theatrically. And maybe I have a business meeting. She doesn't get it, the fool, that you have to build a career, make connections. That's why I earn 5 times more than her classmates, and she's stuck in the kitchen as she should be. Paul, it's not nice to talk about your wife like that, frowned Victor Simmons, the old accountant who had worked at the bank since its founding. His gray hair was neatly combed back, and on his jacket lapel was a Financial Service Excellence badge from the old days. She takes care of your mother, too. That's hard work, I know. I went through it myself. What's wrong with that? Paul poured expensive Kentucky bourbon into the glasses, spilling a bit on the snow-white tablecloth. She's not living for free. I feed her, clothe her, bought her a car even. An old Chevy, true, he smirked, showing his expensive porcelain crowns. Hasn't earned more yet. When she learns to respect her husband properly, then maybe I'll splurge on a foreign one. Uneven laughter ran around the table, but somehow strained. The women exchanged looks of clear disapproval, and some even shook their heads. At the neighboring table, someone quietly gasped. Paul turned sharply and met the gaze of the new bank director, Max Thomas, a tall, fit man in his mid-40s with noble gray at the temples and piercing gray eyes. He looked at Paul with undisguised contempt, but said nothing, lightly swirling a glass of mineral water in his hand. Whatever. Paul mentally brushed it off. My work is impeccable, nothing to pick on. And that I keep my wife strict, that's my personal business. Meanwhile, in a panel 5-story walk-up in the suburbs of New York, in a small 2-bedroom apartment inherited from Paul's parents, Emily Warner was changing a compress on Valerie's forehead, flinching at each of her moans. The old American bed with the box spring creaked at every movement of the sick woman. Hang in there, Mom. whispered Emily, adjusting the pillow embroidered by Valerie's grandmother. The medicine will work soon. Good German medicine. Paul got it specially. She didn't say that she bought the medicine with her own savings, set aside once for a new coat. The old polyester one from the 1980s had completely worn out. But Paul thought it was fine. "Where's Paul?" the old woman said with difficulty, her dry fingers with protruding veins squeezing her daughter-in-law's hand. "Delayed at work," Emily lied, glancing at the old wall clock with a cuckoo. A Warner family relic. It was almost 11 at night. She knew her husband was at the corporate party. She also knew he would boast to colleagues again, humiliating her. It had become a tradition. In the early years of marriage, she went with him to such events. But after several times when Paul publicly called her his cook and homebody, she stopped appearing in public with her husband. Finishing with the compress, Emily quietly closed the door to her mother-in-law's room and returned to the kitchen. There, on the table covered with wood-patterned oilcloth, stood an old laptop, the only thing left from her previous life when she still worked at a research institute. A complex table with the bank's financial indicators glowed on the screen. Paul had to submit this quarterly report in 2 days, and as always brought his scribbles to his wife before submission so she could bring everything to perfect order. Emily sighed and rubbed her tired eyes. Once she dreamed of a big career, her own office, important projects. After college, she was even invited for an internship in Seattle at a prestigious financial center. But then Paul appeared, handsome, confident, promising the world, and she chose family. "Paul's good," suddenly came Valerie's weak voice from the room. "Just weak, like his father. Men in our family are all loud, but empty inside." Emily silently nodded, though her mother-in-law couldn't see her. She remembered how, just a month ago, Valerie called her a homewrecker and gold digger. Funny how illness changes people. Since the first stroke, her mother-in-law seemed to see her son's true nature. Emily's old flip phone beeped with a message. She flinched and reached for it, hoping it was from her husband, but it was just an automatic reminder about the loan payment they took for Valerie's treatment. She sighed and returned to the calculations, deftly manipulating the numbers in the table. No one at the bank knew that the brilliant financial models for which Paul had been awarded twice were fully developed by his dumb homemaker. Emily didn't seek recognition. She just wanted her husband not to lose his job, because then they wouldn't have money for Valerie's medicines. In the restaurant, meanwhile, Paul had switched from bourbon to vodka. He unbuttoned the top buttons of his shirt and loosened his tie. His hair, carefully styled with expensive gel, was disheveled, and his eyes were clouded with drunken haze. Now he was dancing with a young waitress, a busty blonde in a short skirt who laughed loudly at his jokes and didn't step away. "This one's prettier than mine," he loudly declared to the colleagues who returned to the table, shamelessly hugging the girl around her slim waist. "Maybe it's time to trade in for a newer model. What do you say, guys?" He didn't notice the bank director approaching their table and stopping right behind him. Max Thomas was a man of the new generation, one who made his fortune in the 90s not on speculations and schemes, but on honest financial analysis and smart investments. A year ago, he bought a controlling stake in the bank, Stability, and was now, slowly but surely, weeding out everyone who didn't meet his high standards. "Warner," Max's voice thundered like lightning in a clear sky, making Paul flinch. "Come to my office on Monday with the report and with your wife." Paul slowly turned around. The steel eyes of his boss read a sentence. "With my wife? Why?" he stammered, instantly sobering up. "You'll find out," Polonov replied shortly and walked away without waiting for an answer. What is he planning? Paul feverishly thought, watching the director's straight figure recede. Did he guess? But how? I was careful. No one knows that Emily does all the calculations. Maybe someone snitched. That old hag Mary Peterson? Or Victor? But he didn't have time to think it through. The waitress poured him more vodka, and the new shot washed away all worries. We'll figure it out, Paul thought, downing the burning liquid. He returned home well past midnight. He reeked of cheap perfume, and on the collar of his snow-white shirt was a red lipstick stain. Without taking off his shoes, he went into the room where his mother-in-law slept peacefully and loudly turned on the light. "Mom, get up. We have a celebration. I decided to send you to a nursing home. Enough sitting on our necks." Valerie flinched and opened her eyes, her pale face, gaunt from illness, twisted in fear, her wrinkled hands lying on top of the old wool blanket, a wedding gift from. Her mother in the 50s trembled like aspen leaves. Emily, hearing the noise, ran out of the kitchen and froze in the doorway, seeing her husband looming over her mother-in-law's bed like a storm cloud. "Paul, what are you doing?" She rushed to the bed, shielding the old woman. "Have you lost your mind? Mom can't get upset. Dr. Erickson strictly forbade any stress. She's not my mom anymore." Paul swayed, barely keeping his balance on his new Italian shoes bought with his last bonus. "A burden. You know how much money goes to her medicines, and what's the point? She's going to die soon anyway, and I could buy a new car like Stan's from the currency department." He reeked so strongly of alcohol and women's perfume that Emily winced. She recognized that smell. It was the perfume used by waitress Sarah from the cafe across from the bank, where Paul often stopped by for business. "Shut up." Emily raised her voice at her husband for the first time in many years, feeling something snap inside. 15 years of humiliation, fear, and obedience turned into rage. "Go to sleep. You're drunk. And don't dare talk about the mother who gave her whole life to you." "Don't tell me what to do," Paul roared, swinging at his wife. The blow missed its mark. He miscalculated and missed, nearly falling on the nightstand with medicines. "I'm the master in my house. If I want, I'll throw you both out. The apartment's in my name." Valerie quietly cried, covering her face with trembling hands with protruding veins and age spots. Red spots appeared on her withered cheeks, which was a very dangerous sign with her hypertension. "Son, why?" she whispered, looking at Paul with eyes full of pain and bewilderment. "I raised you, everything for you. Your dad left early. I worked 3 jobs, so you had everything." "For ruining my whole life," Paul shouted, spitting on the starch pillowcase. "Always yours. Stay home, Paulie. Don't go there, Paulie. And when I wanted to go to trade school, you didn't let me. You'll be an accountant, like your father. And now I have to pay for you? Screw you all." He turned and, stumbling over the shag carpet from the old days, left the room, knocking over a crystal vase from the nightstand on the way. A minute later, the front door slammed, and the echo of his unsteady steps sounded in the hallway. Emily quickly dialed the ambulance number, which she knew by heart. Valerie's pulse was weak and rapid, her breathing intermittent. The old wall clock ticking time since the Eisenhower era seemed to slow down. While waiting for the doctors, she applied a cold towel to her mother-in-law's temples and whispered words of comfort. "Don't listen to him, Mom. That's not him. That's the vodka talking. He loves you. He's just tired. Lots of problems at work. Pressure from all sides." Emily didn't believe her own words, but said them out of habit like a mantra. "I'm tired too," she thought, looking out the window at the falling snow. 15 years of this life, 15 years of humiliation and fear. And for what? For a person who doesn't even appreciate the sacrifices made for him. The ambulance arrived in 40 minutes. Holidays affected the workload of medical services. An older doctor with a tired face and gray hair, carelessly pinned with a vintage claw clip, examined Valerie, measured her blood pressure, and shook her head. "Looks like a mini-stroke. Need to go to the hospital, but no beds now. Holidays, you understand. All beds are taken, some with ulcer flare-ups, some with heart attacks. Let's give a sedative shot, and after the holidays, come for a checkup at the clinic on Broadway. Here's the referral. I know my old classmate there. He's a good specialist, old school." "And if she gets worse?" Emily asked, frightened, taking the paper with the sweeping signature and stamp. "Then call again. The doctor shrugged, wiping her hands with antiseptic. But what can I do? Everywhere's overcrowded. We've been working without days off for days. Try to manage yourselves. You seem like an educated woman. Can you measure blood pressure? Well, if it's over 160, call right away. When the ambulance left, Emily sat by her mother-in-law's bed and took her hand. The old woman's icy fingers were so fragile they seemed they could break from the slightest pressure. Everything will be fine, Mom. I won't leave you. We'll manage. Emily tried to speak confidently, though inside everything clenched from helplessness and fear. Valerie weakly squeezed her fingers. On her ring finger, an old wedding ring gleamed dully. She hadn't taken it off even 20 years after her husband's death. Emily, the box. In the closet, top shelf behind the stack of sheets. She whispered barely audibly, "What box?" Emily didn't understand, leaning closer. "The old one with flowers Grandma's still." Look, Emily obediently got up and went to the old birch wardrobe, Valerie's pride inherited from her parents. In the old days, such furniture could only be gotten through big connections. On the top shelf, among stacks of neatly ironed bed linen smelling of lavender, stood a carved wooden box with peeling paint. The cornflowers depicted on the lid had almost faded from time. Emily carefully took it down and brought it to her mother-in-law. "Open it," Valerie asked, propping herself up on the pillows. Inside, on faded velvet once burgundy, lay antique jewelry, a gold brooch with dark red garnets resembling drops of clotted blood, pearl earrings in an antique white gold setting, several rings with stones of different colors, sapphires, rubies, emeralds. "Grandma's, from before the war, real, not like what they make now," the old woman said with difficulty, stroking the brooch with trembling fingers. "My grandpa was an engineer, worked for Nobel. In the 40s, they hid it, and then, when everything calmed, hide it. Take it for yourself. Just don't tell Paul. He'll drink it away. Or give it to his..." "What are you saying, Mom?" Emily exclaimed, shocked by what she saw. These jewels were worth a fortune. "Why give me your jewelry? You'll get better. Wear them yourself. At your 80th birthday, everyone will gasp." "No." Valerie weakly shook her head, and a few gray hairs remained on the pillow. "I feel I don't have long. Heart's acting up, legs won't hold. And this is for you, for your kindness, for your care, for putting up with my no-good Paul. I see everything. Not blind yet." She closed her eyes and breathed more evenly. The sedative started working. Emily quietly closed the box lid and hid it back on the shelf behind the stack of linens. Thoughts swirled chaotically in her head. With such jewels, she could start a new life, leave Paul, rent an apartment, maybe even open her own business. But something inside resisted this thought. She couldn't abandon her sick mother-in-law, and taking her along would mean subjecting her to new stresses. Paul returned only for lunch the next day, rumpled and angry with the smell of hangover and a bruise under his eye. Apparently the night didn't end as he planned. Seeing his pale wife, who hadn't slept all night, he snorted defiantly. "What, complaining about me to Mom now? Conspiring against me? Probably already divided the inheritance? Paul, your mom had a mini stroke. The doctor came. Here's the referral for a checkup after the holidays." Emily handed him the paper, trying to speak calmly. "She needs complete rest and good medicine." "And how much will that cost?" was the first thing Paul asked, not even glancing at the referral. "I don't have a printing press, you know." "I don't know exactly, but I can sell my earrings, the ones you gave me for our first anniversary." Emily remembered the silver earrings with cubic zirconia that Paul bought on sale from some street vendor. He loved to boast about his generosity, though the earrings cost pennies. "No way," Paul snorted, kicking off his boots right in the middle of the hallway. "I didn't buy them for you to sell. Those are family heirlooms, by the way. My grandma wore them." He lied, shamelessly, and both knew it. Let the government treat her since they take our taxes. He went to the kitchen, wincing from a headache, opened the fridge, and pulled out a bottle of kefir, which he drained straight from the bottle without bothering with a glass. "Where's lunch?" he asked discontentedly, surveying the empty stove. "Some wife can't even feed your husband?" "I didn't have time to cook. I sat with your mom all night," Emily replied guiltily, though she didn't feel guilty. "I can quickly make eggs or boil dumplings." "You're mocking me. Everyone's against me," Paul exploded, slamming the fridge door so hard that the jars of pickles inside clinked plaintively. "Of course. When it's time to feed your husband, always excuses, but with that old hag you spend days and nights. Admit it, you're just waiting for her to croak and will the apartment to you." "Paul," Emily flushed with indignation. "How can you? That's your mother." "Fine, I'll go to the cafe. Eat. Sarah's food is way better than your day-old dumplings anyway." He smirked maliciously, noticing how his wife flinched at the mention of the waitress's name. "And you better get to work. Finish the report." "Almost," Emily nodded, deciding not to pursue the Sarah topic. "It'll be ready by evening. I just need to finish the third section and update the charts." "By evening?" Paul exploded, instantly forgetting about Sarah. "You've gotten too bold. I have to submit it on Monday, and if there are errors, when will I check it? Do you even understand what responsibility is on me? This is a quarterly report for the board of directors." "Paul, I'll do everything right," Emily said quietly, trying to calm him. "When have I let you down? In 15 years, was there ever an error in the calculations?" He calmed down a bit, remembering that indeed his wife never made mistakes. Thanks to her tips, he had gotten 2 promotions and was considered one of the best specialists in the bank. "Well, watch it. If I lose my bonus because of you, you'll owe me for life." He threatened with his finger as if she were a naughty schoolgirl. Paul left, slamming the door so hard that plaster fell from the ceiling in the hallway. Emily sighed with relief and returned to the computer, where the unfinished report waited. She knew her husband never checked her work, simply didn't understand all those complex calculations and financial models. He just took the finished file, passed it off as his own, and that was it. The only thing that interested him was the bonus and praise from management. Large January snow fell outside the window, covering the dirty snowdrifts with fresh whiteness. 3 days left until Christmas. Once it was her favorite holiday, with the smell of oranges, the sparkle of garlands, and hope for a miracle, with the song 5 minutes from an old movie and the mandatory holiday special on TV. Now she expected nothing good except maybe Paul's bonus. Then perhaps he'd relent and allow buying the expensive medicines for his mother that the doctor prescribed a month ago. Immersed in work on complex financial tables, Emily didn't notice how time flew. She flinched when the doorbell rang. Did Paul forget his keys? She thought, but opening the door, she saw a young courier in a uniform jacket with the logo of a well-known delivery service. In his hands was a large box, tied with a blue ribbon. "Emily Anderson Warner?" he asked, checking the data on his tablet. "Yes, that's me," she replied warily, not expecting any packages. "Package for you from the company Nutrisystem. Sign here, please." He handed her the tablet and stylus. Emily signed in bewilderment and accepted the bulky box. Back in the apartment, she carefully untied the ribbon and opened the lid. Inside was special nutrition for bedridden patients, several cans of expensive nutritional mix she had only read about online but couldn't afford, a pack of expensive Swiss vitamins, and a note on thick cream paper with embossing. "For your mother-in-law, get well, Max Thomas." Emily's breath caught. The bank director? How does he know about their problems, and why is he helping? They hadn't even been introduced. She hadn't appeared at corporates for many years. The phone rang so unexpectedly that Emily almost dropped the note. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello," she said uncertainly. "Emily Anderson?" "Max Thomas speaking." "Did you get the package?" "Yes," Emily stammered, flustered. Thank you so much, but how did you know? I have my sources. A smile could be heard in the caller's voice. I've been watching your husband's work for a long time, more precisely your work that he passes off as his. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. I don't understand what you're talking about, she muttered. You understand everything, Emily, Max replied calmly. I've been in finance for years and can tell the hand of a real professional. Your husband can't even compose an elementary financial model, I checked, and what he brings to work is top-notch. There are two options. Either he steals others' developments or someone does it for him. And judging by everything, that someone is you. Emily was silent, not knowing what to say. Her secret, which she had hidden so carefully for years, was revealed. Don't be afraid, I'm not going to fire him yet, Polonov continued. But I'd like to meet you in person, talk. I have an offer that might interest you. What offer? Emily asked warily. Come on Monday with your husband to my office and find out. A smile sounded in Max's voice again. And don't worry about your mother-in-law. I arranged for a good doctor from a private clinic to come to you tomorrow. He'll examine Valerie and prescribe treatment, at my expense, of course. But why do you need this? Emily asked in bewilderment. Everyone has their reasons, Max replied evasively. Let's say I value professionalism and don't like when talented people are used. See you Monday, Emily. He hung up, leaving Emily in complete confusion. What does all this mean? And what will happen when Paul finds out his deception is exposed? I sat with your mom all night, Emily replied guiltily. Of course. Always excuses when it's time to feed your husband, but with that old hag you spend days and nights. He slammed the fridge angrily. Fine, I'll go to the cafe, eat, and you better get to work. Finish the report. Almost. Emily nodded. It'll be ready by evening. By evening? Paul exploded. You've gotten too bold. I have to submit it on Monday, and if there are errors, when will I check? Paul, I'll do everything right, Emily said quietly. When have I let you down? He calmed down a bit. Well, watch it. If I lose my bonus because of you... Paul left, slamming the door. Emily sighed with relief and returned to the computer. She knew her husband never checked her work, simply didn't understand all those complex calculations. He passed them off as his own, and that was it. Large January snow fell outside the window. 3 days left until Christmas, once it was her favorite holiday, with the smell of oranges, the sparkle of garlands, and hope for a miracle. Now she expected nothing good except maybe Paul's bonus, then perhaps he'd relent and allow buying medicine for his mother. Immersed in work, Emily didn't notice how time flew. She flinched when the doorbell rang. On the threshold stood a courier with a large box. Emily Anderson Warner, he asked, checking his tablet. Yes, that's me. Package for you from Nutrisystem. Sign here, please. Emily signed in bewilderment and accepted the box. Inside was special nutrition for bedridden patients, a pack of expensive vitamins, and a note, for your mother-in-law. Get well, Max Thomas. Emily's breath caught. The bank director. How does he know about their problems and why is he helping? On Monday morning, the Warner apartment had a nervous atmosphere. Paul, dressed in his best suit bought back in the Clinton era, as he liked to emphasize, fussed in front of the mirror, constantly adjusting his tie, which wouldn't tie straight. What's wrong? He fumed, yanking the striped silk tie. Emily, come here. Tie it properly. Emily obediently approached and with deft movements formed a perfect knot. She herself was shaking with excitement but tried not to show it. After Max Thomas's call, she couldn't find peace. What awaited them in the director's office? Did you dress decently at least? Paul inspected her discontentedly. This is Thomas. A big shot. What are you wearing? Emily smoothed her only decent skirt, dark blue, straight cut, sewn back at a factory in the Ford era. The blouse, though, was relatively new, a gift from a friend for her last birthday. "Paul, this is all I have," she replied quietly. "You don't let me buy new clothes." "Why do you need it? You don't go anywhere." Paul shrugged. "Just wasting money. Fine, it'll do. Main thing, don't open your mouth extra there. I'll do the talking." He inspected himself critically in the mirror one last time, smoothed his thinning hair with bald spots at the temples, and headed to the door. "I'll check on Mom to say goodbye," Emily said. "Just quick. We can't be late." Valerie felt a bit better after the visit from the private doctor sent by Thomas. The doctor examined her, prescribed modern medicines, and left his phone number in case of worsening. Emily still couldn't believe such generosity from a stranger. "Mom, Paul and I are leaving for a bit." She adjusted the pillow and blanket. "Here's water, here's pills. If you need anything, call the neighbor. I arranged. Ann Wilson will check on you." "Where are you going?" Valerie asked in a weak voice. "To a meeting with the bank director." The old woman's eyes suddenly became clear and attentive. "Emily," she took her daughter-in-law's hand. "Don't be afraid of anything. Your time has come." Emily looked at her mother-in-law in surprise, but Paul was already impatiently stamping his feet in the hallway, and she hurried out. The bank, Stability, was located in a historic mansion on Fifth Avenue. Once a famous merchant lived here, then it was a party office, and in the 90s the current bank owner bought the building. Massive wooden doors, marble columns, crystal chandeliers, everything breathed reliability and prosperity. "I'm scared, Paul," Emily admitted as they climbed the wide staircase to the director's office. "Come on," Paul snorted, but it was noticeable he was shaking too. "What's to fear? I tell you, my reports are impeccable. Maybe he just wants to praise me in front of my wife, that's all." "Your reports," Emily thought bitterly, but stayed silent. The secretary, a youthful woman in a strict suit, escorted them to the spacious office with high ceilings and huge windows. Behind a massive oak desk sat Max Thomas. Seeing the visitors, he stood and smiled broadly. "Glad to see you, Paul Stephen." He shook Paul's hand firmly. "And you, Emily Anderson." To Emily's surprise, he greeted her with no less respect, even bowing his head slightly. "Have a seat." Thomas indicated the chair in front of the desk. "Coffee, tea?" "Coffee, if possible," Paul answered, casting a warning glance at his wife. "Emily doesn't drink coffee. She has blood pressure." "Tea for you, Emily." Thomas pressed a button on the desk and gave instructions to the secretary. "How's your mom's health, Paul Stephen?" "They say she's unwell." Paul was taken aback by the unexpected question. Yes, a little. Old age, you know." "I hope the medicines I sent helped," Thomas asked casually, watching Paul's reaction. He paled and cast a frightened glance at his wife. "What medicines?" he muttered. "The ones I sent with the courier on Saturday." "You didn't know?" Thomas innocently raised his eyebrows. "I thought during holidays it's hard to get good drugs, so I arranged. I went through it myself once. My mother was ill too." Yes, of course," Paul stammered. Big thanks." "I was just going to thank you." "No need for thanks." Thomas waved it off. "By the way, did you bring the report?" "Yes, here it is." Paul handed over the folder with documents, "all ready as you asked." Max Thomas quickly scanned the papers, then set them aside and looked intently at Paul. "Tell me, Warner, do you yourself understand what's written in this report?" "Of course," Paul answered too quickly. "It's clear as day here." "Then could you explain this formula to me?" Thomas opened one of the pages and pointed to a complex mathematical expression. Paul paled even more. This is a standard formula for calculating investment efficiency," he squeezed out. "Is that so?" Thomas narrowed his eyes. "And I thought it was a custom risk assessment model using the Monte Carlo method. Quite innovative, I must say. I haven't seen such anywhere. Paul nervously swallowed and cast a pleading glance at his wife. "Well, yes, that's what I meant," he muttered. "Just phrased it not quite accurately." "I see," Thomas drawled. "And could you right now on this sheet of paper," he pushed a blank sheet to Paul, "sketch a simple cash flow model for a new project? Nothing complicated, literally 5 minutes work for a specialist of your level." Beads of sweat appeared on Paul's forehead. He took the pen, twirled it in his hands, started writing something, then crossed it out, wrote again. "I'm not informed today," he finally squeezed out. "Pressure maybe another time." "No, I insist." Thomas's voice became firm. "Or maybe Emily can help us." "She," Paul laughed nervously, "she doesn't understand any of this. She's a homemaker." "Really?" Thomas shifted his gaze to Emily. "But you have a summa cum laude from Yale in finance, if I'm not mistaken. Times were different. They taught thoroughly." Emily flinched in surprise. "How do you know?" she whispered. "I have my sources," Thomas smiled. "So will you try?" He pushed the blank sheet to her. Emily uncertainly took the pen, but as soon as she started writing, her hand drew clear formulas and diagrams on its own. In a few minutes, a perfectly composed cash flow model lay before her. Thomas carefully studied her work, then nodded with satisfaction. "As I thought. Brilliant, Emily. That's the hand I've seen in all the reports your husband has submitted in recent years." A heavy silence fell. Paul sat with his head lowered, not daring to raise his eyes. "Warner, you're fired," Thomas said calmly, "for professional fraud and deceiving the company." But, Paul stammered. "No buts. You've been passing off someone else's work as your own for years. It's not just dishonest, it's a crime. I could sue you, but I won't. For your mother's sake, you'll collect your things today and never cross this bank's threshold again." Paul jumped up, his face twisted in rage. "How dare you? I've given so many years to this bank." Sit down," Thomas said in an icy tone, "or I'll call security." Paul collapsed back into the chair. "And now to you, Emily." Thomas turned to the woman, frozen in horror. "I have a business proposal for you. I offer you to take your husband's place with a salary twice as high." Emily couldn't believe her ears. "Me? But I haven't worked for so many years." "Officially," she added, glancing at her husband. "Judging by these reports," Thomas patted the folder, "you've been working all these years and very well. I need such specialists." "You wouldn't dare!" Paul suddenly squealed, jumping up and grabbing his wife's arm. "You're my wife. You'll stay home." "Security!" Thomas called loudly, and two burly men entered the office. "Escort Mr. Warner to the exit and make sure he collects his things and leaves the building." "You'll regret this, both of you," Paul shouted as he was led out of the office. "I won't forgive this." When the door closed behind him, Emily quietly cried, covering her face with her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want it to turn out like this. He's my husband. I was just helping him." "Helping is one thing," Thomas replied softly, handing her a handkerchief. "Allowing yourself to be used is another. You're a talented financier, Emily. Your place isn't in the kitchen, but here in the bank. Think about my proposal." "And what about my mother-in-law?" Emily asked confusedly. "Who will take care of her?" "I'll arrange a full-time nurse at the bank's expense. Consider it part of your social package." Emily raised surprised eyes at him. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me at all." Max Thomas smiled, and his face suddenly became surprisingly soft. "I know more than you think. I studied at Yale, too, just 5 years after you. I remember your research articles in the Economic Bulletin. You were tipped as a rising star in the financial world, and then you suddenly disappeared, got married, and dropped off the radar. I always wondered what happened to you." Emily didn't know what to say. Someone read her articles, remembered them, It seemed incredible after so many years of humiliation and devaluation. "I need to think," she finally said. "It's all so sudden." "Of course," Thomas nodded. "You have until the end of the week. And meanwhile," he took an envelope from the desk drawer, "here's an advance, just in case. I know how hard it can be to decide on changes." The envelope contained $5,000, the amount Paul earned in a whole month. "Thank you," Emily whispered, taking the envelope with trembling hands. I don't know how to thank you." "Just don't miss your chance," Thomas replied seriously. "Enough living someone else's life, time to start your own." When Emily returned home, Paul was already there. He paced the apartment like a wounded beast, throwing things off shelves and shouting curses. "You're here?" He turned sharply to his wife, and she recoiled, seeing his bloodshot eyes. "Happy? Destroyed me? Trampled me?" "Paul, I didn't do anything," Emily replied quietly, clutching her purse with the precious envelope to her chest. "You passed off my work as yours for years." "And who allowed you to work at all?" he yelled, stepping closer. "I picked you up from the gutter, made you a person, and you, as soon as I turned away, started wagging your tail in front of management." "Don't dare talk like that." Emily's voice suddenly became firm. "I put up with your insults, drinking, cheating for 15 years. 15 years I did the work for you that got you bonuses and promotions. And not once, hear me, not once did I get even a simple thank you." Paul was stunned by such a retort. His usually quiet and submissive wife suddenly turned into an unfamiliar woman with burning eyes and firmly pressed lips. "What did this Thomas do to you?" he hissed. "Dragged you to bed, huh? Offered my position for that?" The sound of the slap echoed through the apartment. Emily herself didn't understand how her hand flew up and hit her husband on the cheek. "Never," she said firmly. "Never dare say that again." Paul clutched his reddened cheek. Fear flashed in his eyes. What are you allowing yourself?" he croaked. "I'll throw you out, on the street." "Throw me out," Emily replied calmly. "Just know if I leave, I'll take my mother-in-law with me." "And what money will you treat her with? You have no job anymore." Paul opened his mouth but found no answer. All his arrogance suddenly evaporated, his shoulders slumped. "And what now?" he asked sullenly. "Now I'll work at the bank," Emily answered. "And you? You can stay here if you want, but on one condition: you'll help take care of Mom while I'm at work." "Me? Empty bedpans for the old hag?" Paul was indignant. "No way." "Then pack your things," Emily shrugged. "The apartment may be yours, but the court always sides with the sick person, especially with witness testimonies of abuse." It was a bluff. She had no witnesses, but Paul seemed to believe it. "Fine," he grumbled after a long pause. "I'll stay. But I won't care for the old hag, know that. Hire a nurse." "A nurse will come starting tomorrow," Emily informed, "at the bank's expense, and you do what you want. Just don't interfere with our lives." She walked past her stunned husband into her mother-in-law's room. Valerie wasn't sleeping. Apparently, she heard the whole scandal. "Everything's fine, Mom." Emily sat on the edge of the bed and took the old woman's hand. "I'm going to work at the bank in a good position now. We'll be able to buy all the necessary medicines for you." "And Paul?" Valerie asked anxiously. He needs time to realize everything," Emily replied diplomatically. "But don't worry, he won't go anywhere." Emily's first workday at the bank passed like a dream, her own office with an oak desk and leather chair, polite colleagues addressing her by first and middle name, a secretary bringing coffee in a porcelain cup. It all seemed unreal after 15 years of home confinement. Thomas personally introduced her to the team in the spacious conference room where all the financial department employees gathered. "Meet Emily Anderson Warner, our new financial analyst. Many of you are familiar with her work, though you didn't suspect it." He smiled meaningfully, and a whisper ran through the room. Some women looked with sympathy, men with curiosity. Emily felt awkward in her old-fashioned skirt and blouse, but tried to hold herself with dignity. Mary Peterson from the planning department approached Emily during lunch break when everyone headed to the corporate cafeteria with the smell of homemade burgers and fresh-baked bread. "I always knew you did all the work for that loser," she said bluntly, sitting at the table with a tray featuring Chilean burgers with fries. "I never believed your Paul had the brains for such calculations. Even at your wedding, I told him, 'Look, Paul, you snagged such a smart one. Take care of her.' And he just laughed. 'I'll make a person out of her.'" "Tsk. You knew?" Emily was surprised, breaking off a piece of fresh rye bread. "Of course," Mary snorted, adjusting her horn-rimmed glasses she'd worn since the 80s. "We all knew. You think why Thomas figured him out so fast? We told him as a team, tired of watching him boast about your achievements while keeping you down. Imagine, with a summa cum laude from Yale and in the kitchen. In our time, that was unimaginable. We women of the old guard always worked on par with men." Emily was touched to tears. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling a lump in her throat. "No big deal, dear." Mary Peterson patted her shoulder motherly. "We women have to stick together, especially now with so many predators around. That Paul of yours is just the tip. There are such sharks swimming here. God forbid you watch out with Thomas." Emily didn't quite understand what her colleague meant, but nodded gratefully and focused on the food. For the first time in many years, she lunched not on hastily cooked pasta, but tasty, varied food. It seemed almost luxurious. In the evening, as she was getting ready to go home, carefully packing her first independent developments into her old briefcase, Thomas peeked into the office. "How was the first day?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. In a strict dark blue suit and snow-white shirt, he looked respectable and imposing. "Wonderful," Emily answered sincerely. "I didn't think I was still capable of working at this level so many years past." "You underestimate yourself," Max smiled. "Talent has no expiration date. By the way, I'd like to invite you to dinner to celebrate the new appointment and discuss the development strategy for your department." Emily blushed, feeling color rush to her cheeks. "That's very kind of you, but I'm married." "I know," Thomas replied calmly, "and I don't intend to cross boundaries. Just a business dinner. It's customary in our bank to celebrate important events like this." Emily hesitated. On one hand, refusing the boss was awkward. On the other, wow, what would Paul say? Though what did she care about his opinion now? After today, she felt she no longer needed to report to her husband for every step. "Okay," she finally agreed. "Where and when?" "Restaurant The Plaza at 8. I'll send a car for you." Thomas smiled and left, leaving Emily in a turmoil of feelings. At home, a surprise awaited Emily. Paul, dressed in his dress suit, the one he wore to his cousin's wedding 5 years ago, met her with a bouquet of carnations, bought, judging by the cellophane, at the subway station. Forgive the fool," he said soulfully, handing the flowers. "I got hot-headed. Didn't understand what I was saying. Nerves, you know. Losing a job is no joke." Emily took the bouquet distrustfully. In 15 years of marriage, Paul had never given her flowers, even on birthdays. The most he splurged on was a box of chocolates on International Women's Day. "Are you drunk?" she asked directly, sniffing. "No," he protested hotly. "Sober as a judge, even made dinner, heated dumplings and made broth for Mom, myself with my own hands from chicken like you like." Emily went to the kitchen. Indeed, on the table, covered with new oilcloth, where did he get it, stood plates with dumplings and chicken broth with dill warmed on the stove. "What happened, Paul?" she asked tiredly. "Why this show?" "No show." He took offense, pretending to be hurt to the core. "I just realized everything. You were right. I used you. It turned out bad, but I'll change." You'll see I'll be a caring husband, just like in the early years. Remember how we went to Miami? Back in '97, I bought you ice cream every day then. Paul, Emily looked her husband in the eyes attentively. What do you really want? He hesitated, looked away, nervously fiddling with the edge of the new oilcloth. Well, I thought, since you're working at the bank now, maybe there's a spot for me too. Not in ours, of course, since they know me there. But you could put in a word with Thomas. He surely has connections in other banks. I'm okay with a lower position for starters. There it is, Emily smiled bitterly. Same old Paul, thinking only of himself, even now, after everything. I can't, she cut off, and I won't. You parasitized on me for 15 years. Enough. Want to work? Find it yourself. And I have no time. I have dinner with management. What? Paul roared, instantly losing all his feigned kindness. What dinner? With that slick Thomas? Yes, with Max Thomas, Emily replied calmly, heading to the bedroom to change. It's a business meeting. It's customary in our bank. Sure, business, Paul rushed after, blocking the hallway. I know these business meetings. Just time to spread your legs. Emily turned sharply, and Paul involuntarily stepped back, seeing her expression. One more word in that tone, she said quietly but clearly, and I'm leaving forever with your mother. And believe me, the alimony from you will only cover bread and water. I have money for a good lawyer now. Paul bit his tongue. Arguing with this new, unfamiliar Emily was scary. Where did his quiet, beaten-down wife go, whom he could bully as he wanted? Just don't stay out too late, he grumbled, stepping aside, or Mom will worry. Emily just shook her head. Even now, he couldn't admit he was worried himself. Pride wouldn't allow it. At 8, a black Mercedes with the driver in a uniform cap waited at the entrance. Emily, dressed in her only decent dress, a gift from her sister for her 30th birthday, felt like Cinderella going to the ball. The restaurant The Plaza greeted her with soft light from crystal chandeliers, muted music from a string quartet, and the aroma of exquisite dishes. Max Thomas waited at a table in the back of the hall, elegant and fit, in an evening suit. The restaurant The Plaza greeted her with soft light from crystal chandeliers, muted music, and the aroma of exquisite dishes. Emily, you look wonderful. Thomas gallantly rose to meet her and pulled out the chair. This dress suits you very much. Thank you, Emily blushed, smoothing the folds of her modest outfit. Among the elegant ladies in evening gowns and expensive jewelry, she felt like a poor relative. I haven't gone out anywhere for a long time. That's an unforgivable mistake by your husband, Max noted, filling her glass with white wine. Such a woman should be shown to the world, not hidden. Emily didn't know how to react to such compliments. On one hand, it was pleasant, on the other, scary. Thomas was not just a handsome, successful man. He was her boss. Any mistake could cost her the position she had just gotten. Let's drink, Max suggested, to a new stage in your life. They clinked glasses, and Emily took a small sip. The wine was tart and aromatic. She had never tried such. The conversation first revolved around work. Thomas asked about what changes she planned to make in the financial department, what projects she considered priorities. Emily, shy at first, gradually opened up. It turned out that during years of forced home confinement, she not only didn't lose her professional skills, but continued to follow novelties in the financial world. I read all the specialized journals Paul brought from work, she admitted. Sometimes I sneaked to the library when he was at work, even signed up for online courses. True, my husband didn't know about it. Why were you so afraid of him? Max asked directly. Emily fell silent, twirling the stem of her glass. I don't know, she finally answered. At first, I loved him, then got used to it. And then it became scary to change anything. I have no money of my own. The apartment's in his name. I lost my job back in the 90s when the institute closed. Where would I go? What would I start with? I understand, Thomas nodded. Many women go through this, but now everything's changed. You have a job, you'll have your own money, you can start a new life. And you, Emily suddenly asked, why are you helping me? Max pondered for a moment. My father left my mother when I was 10, he finally said, for a young secretary. Mom worked as an engineer at a factory, but after the divorce, she had to take another job to feed me. She washed strangers' laundry at night and drew blueprints during the day. I swore that when I grew up, I'd never let any woman suffer like that. Emily was touched by his frankness. And your mother, is she alive? No. Max shook his head. Died 5 years ago. Cancer. I managed to buy her a house in the Hamptons, hire the best doctors, but it was too late. Too many years of hard work, stress, deprivations. I'm very sorry, Emily said sincerely. No need, Thomas smiled. The main thing is that her last years she lived like a queen, and now more wine. The evening flew by unnoticed. Emily hadn't felt so relaxed, so alive for a long time. It turned out she still remembered how to laugh, how to maintain an interesting conversation, how to enjoy good food and music. It's late, she caught herself, glancing at her watch. I need to go home. My mother-in-law will worry. Of course, Max nodded. My driver will take you, and Emily, he suddenly took her hand. I want you to know, I'm here if you need help. Emily blushed, but didn't pull her hand away. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. At home, an unpleasant surprise awaited her. Paul wasn't sleeping, sitting in the kitchen in complete darkness. Only a cigarette smoldered in the ashtray. Had your fun? He asked hoarsely when Emily turned on the light. Well, how was it? Did your new boyfriend treat you well? Paul, stop, Emily said tiredly. It was a business dinner. We discussed work. Yeah, sure, Paul drawled sarcastically. And then he took you to his penthouse and showed his stamp collection. Right. I don't have to report to you, Emily cut off. How's Mom? Fine, your mom, Paul grumbled, sleeping. I gave her the medicine like you said. Emily looked at her husband in surprise. Did he really take care of his mother? Thank you, she said sincerely. No big deal, Paul got embarrassed. She's my mother after all. Emily went to the bathroom, feeling a strange warmth spread inside. Maybe not all is lost. Maybe Paul can really change. But her hopes collapsed just a week later. Thomas assigned Emily an important project, developing a new investment strategy for a major client. She sat over the calculations until late at night, saved the file on her work computer, and went home. And in the morning, she found the file gone, along with all backups. What happened? Thomas worried, seeing her pale face. My work. It's gone, Emily answered confusedly. The whole project, all calculations, I don't understand how this could happen. Max frowned and called the system administrator. He investigated and reported in an hour. Someone deliberately deleted all files from Emily's computer and did it remotely through a special program. I checked the IP. It's Paul Stephen Warner's home computer. Emily felt the ground slip away. Paul, but how? Why? To set you up, Thomas said harshly. He wants you to fail the project and lose your job. Then you'll be dependent on him again. I don't believe it, Emily whispered. He couldn't. The facts say otherwise, Max objected. Fortunately, our system automatically backs up all important files. Your work isn't lost, but I'd advise you to seriously think about your safety. A person like your husband won't stop at anything. Emily nodded, feeling a wave of anger rise inside. How dare he, after everything she did for him? In the evening, she resolutely entered the apartment. Paul, as if nothing happened, was watching TV. Why did you do it? Emily asked directly. Do what? Paul innocently raised his eyebrows. Deleted my files from the work computer. Don't pretend the IT guys figured it all out. It was your IP. Paul paled but quickly composed himself. Prove it, he smirked. Maybe your lover set it all up to drive us apart. Enough, Emily raised her voice. I don't believe a single word from you anymore. From today, you and I are strangers. I'm filing for divorce. Go ahead, Paul jumped up. Just know the apartment's mine and I'll throw you out on the street. Let it be, Emily replied calmly. I'll rent a place. On my salary, it's quite possible. And where will you put the old hag? Paul asked snidely. In a nursing home. My mother-in-law will come with me, Emily cut off. She chose me, not you, and I'll take care of her unlike her own son. Paul turned purple with rage. Ah, you. He swung, but Emily didn't back down. Just try, she said quietly, and I'll call the police. I have witnesses to your past behavior. The nurse, neighbors. You'll go to jail for domestic violence, and we're strict about that now. Paul lowered his hand, breathing heavily. Get out, he hissed through his teeth. Both get out. Today. We'll leave tomorrow, Emily replied calmly. And today I'll sleep at my mother-in-law's, and don't think of breaking in at night. I'll put on the deadbolt. She turned and went to Valerie's room. The old woman wasn't sleeping, sitting in bed, propped on pillows, anxiously listening to the shouts. Everything's fine, Mom, Emily smiled. You and I will leave here tomorrow to a new home. And Paul? Her mother-in-law asked in a weak voice. Paul will stay here, Emily replied, and softly, he needs to rethink a lot. Right, Valerie said unexpectedly firmly. Long overdue. I spoiled him and he grew into a monster. Emily hugged the old woman, feeling tears of relief stream down her cheeks. 15 years of nightmare were ending. Ahead was a new life, difficult, unknown, but her own. In the morning, she called Thomas and briefly explained the situation. I need a day off, she concluded. Need to find housing and move my mother-in-law. Don't worry about that, Max replied. I have an empty apartment near Prospect Park. 3 rooms, first floor, convenient for an elderly person. You can live there until you find something permanent. But I can't accept, Emily began. You can, Thomas interrupted. Consider it part of your social package. The bank cares for its valuable employees. Emily gave in. In her position, refusing help was foolish. Thank you, she said sincerely. I don't know how to repay you. Just be happy, Max replied simply. You deserve it. By evening, she and Valerie were settling into the new apartment, spacious, bright, with modern furniture and appliances. Her mother-in-law, brought in a special medical van, was comfortably placed in a separate room with a convenient adjustable bed and a nurse call button. Like a resort, the old woman whispered admiringly, surveying the new home. Emily, are we really going to live like this always? Always, Mom, Emily smiled, arranging medicines on the bedside table. Everything will be fine now. But fate prepared new trials for her. 2 weeks later, returning from work, Emily found Valerie unconscious. The ambulance arrived instantly, but it was too late. A massive stroke left no chances. I'm very sorry, said the young doctor, folding his stethoscope. We did everything we could. Emily nodded, unable to say a word. She didn't cry. Tears froze somewhere deep inside, finding no outlet. Thomas insisted the bank cover all funeral expenses. You're part of our corporate family, he said, and in a family it's customary to support each other in tough times. Paul didn't come to the funeral, sent a wreath with a dry note from the son. Emily wasn't surprised. She expected nothing from her ex-husband anymore. After the funeral, returning to the empty apartment, she felt truly lonely for the first time in a long time. No one needed her care anymore. No one waited at home. The freedom she dreamed of suddenly seemed a frightening emptiness. She mechanically sorted her mother-in-law's things, setting aside stacks of what could be given to the church and what to throw away. In Valerie's purse, an old clutch from the old days, she found an envelope signed in a trembling hand to Emily after my death. Inside was a note. Emily, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Don't grieve for me. I lived a long life, not always happy, but interesting. I know I wasn't the best mother-in-law. Forgive me for all the offenses. You became the daughter I never had. Remember the box with jewelry? It's hidden in the storage above the closet in our old apartment behind the suitcase with winter things. Paul doesn't know about it. These jewels are worth a lot. Grandpa bought them before the war from Tiffany. They're yours. Use them wisely. And also, don't be afraid to love again. You deserve happiness. Your mom, Val. Emily sat for a long time with the note in her hands, unable to hold back tears. Only now did she realize how attached she had become to her mother-in-law over these years. Valerie, despite initial dislike, became a real mother to her. The one Emily lost in her early youth. The box with jewelry. But how to get it? Paul won't let her cross the threshold of the old apartment. She'd have to act cleverly. The next day, Emily called her ex-husband. Paul, I need to pick up some things, she said in an official tone. Not mine, your mom's, personal items, photos, documents. Why? Paul asked snidely. You're not family to her now. Mom asked me to keep some things, Emily explained patiently, as a memory. Fine, come tomorrow at 6, Paul reluctantly agreed. Just quick, I have a date. Not wasting time, Emily thought, but aloud said only, Thanks. I'll be at 6. When she came to the familiar entrance the next day, where she lived 15 years, her heart clenched with a mix of nostalgia and relief. How many tears were shed in these walls? How many humiliations endured? Paul opened the door without even asking who it was. He was dressed in a new suit, smelling of expensive cologne. Faster, he threw instead of a greeting. I have little time. Emily silently entered the apartment. Everything had changed here, new wallpaper, new furniture. Even the smell was different, cigarettes and women's perfume. You living with someone? She asked involuntarily. Jealous? Paul smirked. Yes, moved in with Sarah, the same one from the cafe. She, unlike some, knows a woman's main thing is home and husband, not career. Emily stayed silent. What was the point of arguing? Paul would never change. I need to check the storage above, she said. Mom's winter things are there. Look, Paul shrugged, just don't dawdle. He went to the bathroom and Emily quickly climbed the stepladder and opened the storage. In the far corner was indeed the old suitcase with worn sides. She pushed it aside and felt something hard behind it. The box. Emily carefully lowered it and hid it in her voluminous bag. Then, for cover, she took a few photos from the family album, Valerie's old shawl, and her passport. I'm done, she said to Paul, peeking from the bathroom. Thanks. No problem, he grumbled. Just don't come again. Sarah's jealous. As if I need to come back here, Emily thought, but aloud just said goodbye. At home, she opened the box with trepidation. The jewelry lay where she last saw it. The brooch with garnets, pearl earrings, rings with precious stones. But now Emily noticed what she hadn't before. There was a false bottom in the box. She carefully pried it with her nail and gasped. Under the false bottom lay gold coins from the pre-war era, at least 20. Use them wisely. She recalled her mother-in-law's words. Well, she knew how to dispose of this wealth. The next day, Emily took time off work and went to a major jewelry house on Wall Street. The expert examined the jewels through a loupe for a long time, then shook his head respectfully. Stunning collection, especially the brooch. This is Tiffany work, no doubt. And the coins, in perfect condition, collector's value, were ready to offer you a very good price. The amount the appraiser named made Emily clutch her heart. She had never seen such money in her life. I, I need to think, she muttered. Of course, the expert nodded understandingly. Here's my card. Call when you decide. In the evening, Emily told about her find to Thomas. They were dining at the restaurant The Plaza. This had become a Friday tradition. What should I do with them? She asked confusedly. I've never handled such sums. I have a proposal, Max said thoughtfully. But first tell me, do you trust me? Yes, Emily answered without hesitation. Over the last months, Thomas had become for her not just a boss, a close friend, someone she could always rely on. Then here's what. Our bank was approached by a major client who wants to buy a controlling stake. It's a serious company with a good reputation, but we have a problem with liquidity. We need a large infusion of funds to stabilize the situation. If you invest the money from selling the jewels in the bank, you'll become a co-owner. A small stake, of course, but still. And when the deal happens, you'll get a very decent profit. Emily pondered. The business acumen she once developed in college and then had to abandon now suggested this is a great opportunity. I agree, she said resolutely. Just, I need to leave some money for current expenses. Of course, Max smiled. You're a very businesslike woman, Emily. I like that. His words echoed warmly in her heart. Over the last months, she and Thomas had grown very close, but both carefully kept relations within business bounds. Though Emily noticed how he looked at her when he thought she wasn't looking and caught herself unable to tear her gaze from him. The next day, she sold the jewels and invested most of the money in the bank, thus becoming a minority shareholder. Max personally handled all the paperwork, explaining each step. Now you're officially a co-owner of the bank. Stability, he said solemnly, handing her the documents. Congratulations. And a week later, a scandal erupted. Information about the upcoming deal somehow got to a competing bank, and it launched a massive attack, buying shares on the exchange, poaching clients, spreading negative information. We have a leak, Thomas said grimly at an emergency meeting. Someone's feeding info to competitors. The IT guys started an investigation and quickly traced it. The IP from which the data left belonged to Paul Warner. But how? Emily gasped. He doesn't work at the bank. But he's dating Sarah from the cafe across, explained the security chief, and she's the sister of the deputy director of Bank Mercury, our main competitor. Warner passed her the information he somehow got from us. I didn't tell him anything, Emily said firmly. We don't even communicate. It's not about you, Thomas calmed her. He hacked our system. Apparently hired a hacker avenging the bank for his firing and moonlighting in industrial espionage. What now? Emily asked, frightened. Will the bank go bankrupt? I don't think so. Max was unusually calm. I have a plan, but I need your help. Thomas's plan was risky but brilliant. They decided to feed Paul false information about the bank's alleged impending bankruptcy. Emily was to accidentally meet her ex-husband and hint at problems. He'll surely pass this info to competitors, Max explained, and they'll start dumping our shares en masse to avoid losses, and we'll buy them at a low price. Emily was nervous before meeting Paul. It was the first time she had to not just see her ex-husband, but play a role. The role of a confused, scared woman about to lose everything. The meeting was arranged as if accidental in that same cafe across from the bank where Sarah worked. Emily came there for lunch with Mary Peterson, loudly discussing problems at the bank. Imagine they say we're on the brink of bankruptcy, Mary said deliberately loudly when waitress Sarah approached their table. Thomas is already preparing documents for bankruptcy court. Shh, Emily hissed at her, glancing at the waitress. They'll fire us for disclosure. Sarah pretended she heard nothing, but Emily noticed her eyes gleam. The bait was cast. In the evening, when Emily left the bank, Paul waited at the entrance. Hi! He smiled strainedly. How are you? Long time no see. What do you need? Emily asked coldly, pretending to be in a hurry. Nothing special, Paul shrugged. Just to see how you are. You look tired. No wonder, Emily sighed, recalling Thomas's instructions. Be natural, tell the truth where possible, and embellish a bit where needed. It's a nightmare at work. Everyone's on edge. No one knows what tomorrow brings. Problems? Paul asked, feigned indifferently. You could say, Emily allowed another heavy sigh, but I can't talk about it. You understand, trade secret. Come on. Paul suddenly became very friendly. Who would I tell? We're not strangers. Lived together 15 years. Emily pretended to hesitate. Well, rumors are the bank is on the brink of bankruptcy, she finally said, as if reluctantly. Thomas is preparing documents for court, and I invested all my money, all from Mom's jewels, in shares, and now it'll all be lost. She sobbed for effect. Paul awkwardly patted her shoulder. Don't worry so much, he said with poorly hidden gloating. Maybe it'll work out. And if not, well, life goes on. You can always come back home. Home? Emily raised a distrustful gaze at him. Yes, Paul tried to feign sincerity. I thought we both overreacted. Maybe worth starting over. You come back, run the household again, take care of me. He doesn't even try to hide what he wants, Emily thought with disgust, looking for a free housekeeper. Thanks, but no, she said firmly. I'll manage somehow, can always find a new job. As you wish, Paul shrugged. The offer stands. Okay, I gotta go. Take care. He kissed her on the cheek and quickly walked away. Emily watched him go, feeling a chill down her spine. It all went too easily. The next day, the bank had a tense atmosphere. Rumors of possible bankruptcy somehow leaked to the press. Stability shares plummeted in price. Everything's going according to plan, Thomas said at a closed meeting. Competitors panicked and are dumping shares. We're buying them through shell companies. By day's end, the controlling stake will be ours. And then, Emily asked. Then we'll announce a major deal with an international investor. Max smiled. It's really in the works. We just kept it secret. Shares will skyrocket and we'll all be in big profit. That's what happened. 3 days later, when share prices hit bottom, the bank announced signing a contract with a major Swiss investment fund. Shares instantly jumped, exceeding the original cost by 1.5 times. Emily, who invested all the money from selling the jewels, became a very wealthy woman overnight. Congratulations, Thomas said to her when they celebrated the success in a narrow circle of bank management. You're a millionaire now. All thanks to you, Emily replied sincerely, raising a glass of champagne. If not for you, I'd still be washing dishes at my mother-in-law's. You'd have broken out anyway, Max said confidently. Women like you aren't made for cages. Sooner or later you'd find a way to spread your wings. Their gazes met, and Emily felt her heart beat faster. Over the last months, Max had become much more to her than just a boss or friend, but both carefully maintained distance, not crossing the shaky line between business and personal relations. And a week later, a new scandal hit. Paul Warner was arrested on charges of industrial espionage and attempting to manipulate the securities market. It turned out he not only passed information to competitors, but also actively played on the exchange himself, first earning on insider info, then losing everything on the stability share collapse. He tried to commit suicide in his cell, Thomas reported grimly, placing a fresh newspaper before Emily, but they saved him in time. Emily paled. No matter how she felt about her ex-husband, the news of his suicide attempt shook her. Because of us? She asked quietly. Because of our operation? No, Max shook his head. Because of his own greed and stupidity. We just wanted to protect the bank, and he crossed all lines, broke the law, and paid for it. Emily nodded, but the heaviness in her heart remained. She suddenly remembered young Paul, cheerful, ambitious guy who once won her heart. Where did that person go, or was he never there, just an illusion? I want to visit him, she said resolutely. Why? Thomas was surprised. After everything he did to you? Because once I loved him, Emily answered simply, and promised to be there in sorrow and joy. I broke that promise, but now I want to just humanely support someone who's hit rock bottom. Max looked at her for a long time, then slowly nodded. You're an amazing woman, Emily. I admire you. He personally drove her to the hospital at the detention center where Paul lay. A grim policeman guarded the ward, but seeing Thomas, he snapped to attention and let them in without questions. Paul lay on a narrow hospital bed, pale, gaunt, with bandaged wrists. Seeing his ex-wife, he turned to the wall. Why did you come? He asked dully. To gloat? No, Paul, Emily replied softly, sitting on the bed's edge. Just to see how you are and say I forgive you. Paul turned sharply. His eyes burned with feverish fire. Forgive? He laughed hoarsely. You forgive me? After you and your Thomas played me like a kid, set me up, ruined me. You brought it on yourself, Paul. Emily shook her head. You started the war first, hacked the bank system, passed secret info to competitors. We were just defending. And before that, Paul didn't let up. Before that, you didn't set me up, didn't fire me. You fired yourself, Emily said firmly. When you passed my work as yours for years, humiliated me in front of colleagues, cheated with waitresses, everything that happened to you is the result of your own actions. Paul was silent, turning to the wall. His shoulders trembled finally. I brought you a care package, Emily said, pulling out a bag with fruits, cigarettes, and a warm sweater from her purse. And here's more. She placed an envelope on the nightstand. What's this? Paul asked warily. Money for a lawyer, a good one. He can get you probation, considering all mitigating circumstances. Why do you need this? Surprise sounded in Paul's voice. What are you after? Nothing, Emily shrugged. I just want you to start a new life like I did. Goodbye, Paul. She stood and headed to the exit. At the door, her ex-husband's quiet voice stopped her. Emily, thanks. She turned and smiled at him calmly and a bit sadly. No problem, Paul. Take care. Thomas waited in the hallway, nervously pacing from wall to wall. How did it go? He asked, seeing Emily. Good. She nodded. I did what I had to, and now I feel the burden lifted from my shoulders. I'm finally free, truly free. Max impulsively hugged her, pressing to his chest. I was so afraid he'd say something to make you suffer again. No, Emily shook her head, not pulling away from his embrace. He no longer has power over me. No one does. They stood, embraced in the empty hospital hallway, and Emily suddenly realized that for the first time in many years she felt truly happy, not because a strong, reliable, loving man was beside her, but because she herself had become such strong, reliable, capable of love. Max, she said quietly, raising her face to him, I want to tell you something. About time, he smiled, gently tracing his finger along her cheek. I've been waiting for half a year. For what exactly? Emily blushed. For you to call me by name and stop using formal address. We've long been more than colleagues, more than friends, right? Emily felt color flood her cheeks. Yes, they'd long been more than friends. They just both feared admitting it even to themselves. Yes, she answered simply, looking into his eyes. I love you, Max. And I love you, Emily, he answered just as simply. And I offer you my hand and heart, here and now in this institutional hallway, because I don't want to wait another minute. He knelt on one knee right on the tile floor and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Marry me, Emily. I promise to always be there, support you in all endeavors, and never let you wash dishes at your mother-in-law's. He smiled, and his eyes lit up with warmth and love. Though you definitely like my mom. She was a math professor and a feminist. Was, Emily asked, accepting the ring with a sparkling diamond. Yes, she died 5 years ago, Max nodded, but managed to bequeath me the main thing. Find a woman who's your equal, not above, not below, equal. I searched for such all my life, and found her. Emily put the ring on her left ring finger and felt it fit perfectly, as if made for her. Yes, she said simply. I'll marry you, Max. They slowly walked to the exit, holding hands like teenagers, and outside the window light spring snow fell, covering the city with a clean white blanket, like a sign that you can start everything from a clean slate. Emily and Max's wedding was modest but elegant. No hundreds of guests, multi-tier cakes, and endless toasts. Only the closest colleagues from the bank, a few of Max's old friends, and his two twin sons from his first marriage, 17-year-old Kyle and Dylan. We're so happy for Dad, Kyle said sincerely, kissing Emily on the cheek after the ceremony. He became completely different when he met you alive. You can't imagine how he suffered the divorce, Dylan added. Mom left for his main competitor, Arthur Zimmerman. Know him? Heard of him, Emily nodded. Zimmerman was the owner of that same bank Mercury they feuded with. Dad suffered a lot, Kyle continued, not because of Mom. They were long strangers, but because of the betrayal. He and Zimmerman were friends since college. Now I understand why he reacted so sharply to the story with Paul, Emily said thoughtfully. He went through something similar himself. Exactly, Dylan nodded. But you healed him, and for that we're grateful. The twins hugged her, and Emily felt a lump in her throat. She never had children. Paul didn't want them, said they'd only hinder his career. And now she suddenly had two grown sons, smart, well-mannered, kind. It was a strange and very pleasant feeling. After the wedding, Emily and Max settled in his spacious apartment near Central Park. There were 5 rooms, an office, a huge kitchen, and a terrace with a view of old New York. On weekends, the twins came, and the house filled with cheerful voices, laughter, and the smell of fresh baking. Emily discovered an unexpected talent for cooking when it became not a duty, but a pleasure. At work, things went great. After the share story, bank stability strengthened its market positions, and Emily was promoted to deputy director for finance. Now she had 3 departments and 20 employees under her. You're a natural leader, Max said, watching how deftly she managed the staff. Strict but fair, people respect you. I just remember what it's like when you're not valued, Emily replied, and I try never to repeat others' mistakes. She really was an excellent leader, attentive to details but not petty, demanding but not despotic. Her department showed the best results in the bank, and employees didn't rush to leave even with more lucrative offers from competitors. Life seemed to finally settle into a calm, happy rhythm. But fate prepared one more trial for Emily. One day, returning from work, she found Max in the office with an unfamiliar man. They were discussing something tensely, but fell silent at her appearance. Sorry to interrupt, Emily said, about to leave. I'll come later. No, stay. Max looked worried. This concerns you too. Meet Ian Valentine, private detective. Detective? Emily was surprised. What happened? It's about your ex-husband, Paul Warner, the detective answered instead of Max, a lean man with attentive eyes. He escaped from house arrest 3 days ago. Emily felt a chill down her spine. Escaped? But how? Weren't they watching him? They were, but not thoroughly enough, the detective shrugged. He fooled the electronic bracelet, somehow made the system think he was home, and disappeared himself. Police are searching, but no results yet. And you think he could be dangerous to us? Emily asked, sitting in a chair. Not just think, no. Ian Valentine pulled several sheets from a folder. These are printouts of his social media correspondence. He blames you and your husband for all his troubles and unambiguously threatens revenge. Emily scanned the sheets and paled. Paul wrote terrible things about making them both suffer, avenging the humiliation, settling the score. I understand it's unpleasant, the detective said softly, but you need to know. I recommend strengthening security. Don't go alone. Don't open the door to strangers. Perhaps temporarily move elsewhere. We'll do that, Max said firmly. I have a country house upstate New York, very secluded, known only to the closest. We'll move there for a while. Great idea, the detective nodded. And I'd advise hiring a bodyguard for both of you. When Ian Valentine left, Emily sat silently for a long time, looking out at the window at evening New York. What are you thinking about? Max asked quietly, sitting beside and hugging her shoulders. About how strangely life is arranged, she replied thoughtfully. Just a year ago, I was a downtrodden housewife, penniless, hopeless for the future. And now I'm a successful financier, happy wife, and object of deadly hatred. We'll manage, Max said confidently. We've been through worse. And what can Paul do against us? He's alone, and we're strength. Emily nodded, but anxiety didn't let go. She knew her ex-husband too well, petty, vengeful, unable to forgive even the slightest blow to his ego, let alone such a crushing defeat. The next day they moved to Max's country house, a luxurious modern-style mansion hidden in a pine forest. Around the house was a high fence, modern security system, and 2 guards on shifts. We're safe here, Max said, showing Emily the house. No one knows about this place except the twins and a couple of my most trusted friends. Emily nodded, admiring the spacious rooms with panoramic windows overlooking the forest. It was calm and cozy here, just what was needed to weather the anxious time. She continued working, but now remotely. Fortunately, modern technology allowed video conferences and managing the department from afar. Max also handled most affairs by phone and email, only occasionally going to the city with a bodyguard. A week passed, then another. No news of Paul, as if he dissolved, vanished. The police continued searches, but without much enthusiasm. After all, Warner wasn't a particularly dangerous criminal, just a fraudster who escaped house arrest. Gradually, Emily and Max relaxed. Life in the country turned out pleasant, quiet, measured, healthy. They walked a lot in the forest, cooked together, watched old movies by the fireplace in the evenings. Even work went better. Away from city noise and hustle, the mind worked clearer, ideas came easier. Maybe we should stay here all together, Max suggested once at dinner. Go to the city only when necessary. It's so good here. And the twins, Emily asked. It'll be hard for them to get so far. They have finals soon, then college admission, Max sighed. Afraid we'll see them rarely anyway. Don't say that, Emily stroked his hand. The boys adore you. They'll always find time for visits. I hope, Max smiled. You know what I've been thinking lately about a child, ours with you. How do you feel about that idea? Emily froze with fork in hand. A child at her age, she's over 40. Don't get scared, Max laughed, noticing her reaction. I'm not saying right now, just I'd like another child from the woman I love. I don't know, Emily admitted honestly. Never thought about it seriously. Paul didn't want kids, and then I decided it was too late. Not so risky, Max objected. Modern medicine works wonders. My aunt gave birth at 45 to a healthy girl, and we're not poor. We can afford the best doctors. Emily pondered. A child, her own child, a little being that would be her flesh and blood, her continuation. The thought suddenly seemed incredibly appealing. Let's try, she said unexpectedly even to herself. I want a child, our child. Max beamed and, setting aside utensils, hugged her. You've made me the happiest man in the world, he whispered in her ear. I'll be the best father for our baby. I promise. They were finishing tea, making plans for the future, when the doorbell rang. Strange, Max frowned. Who could it be? We're not expecting anyone. I'll check, said one guard, passing the kitchen to the front door. A minute later he returned. Mr. Thomas, a courier, says urgent delivery for you. Courier? Max was surprised. I didn't order anything. He says it's from Kyle, birthday gift, the guard explained. But my birthday is in a month. Max was even more surprised. And Kyle would just bring the gift himself when he comes on the weekend. Something's wrong, Emily said anxiously. Don't open. Max nodded and turned to the guard. Tell the courier to leave the package on the porch. We'll pick it up later. The guard left, but soon returned with a worried face. He insists on handing it personally, says it's very valuable and he's responsible for safety. Something's off here, Emily repeated, feeling everything clench inside from vague anxiety. Call Kyle, ask if he sent anything. Max pulled out his phone and dialed his son's number. After a few rings, Kyle answered, Hi, Dad. What's up? Kyle, did you send me any gift by courier? Max asked without preamble. No, the son replied, surprised. Why? We'll see Saturday. I was going to... All clear, Max interrupted. Listen carefully. Don't go anywhere from home today. Lock the doors and don't open to anyone. I'll call back in an hour. He hung up and turned to the guard. Call the police immediately and don't open the door under any circumstances. It's Paul, right? Emily asked quietly. He found us. Looks like it. Max nodded grimly. But how? Only a few know about this place. Maybe he followed us? Or the boys, Emily suggested, or someone from our acquaintances. She was interrupted by a deafening explosion. The front door literally flew off its hinges and smoke billowed into the house. The guard closest to the door fell, struck by the blast wave. Run! Max shouted, grabbing Emily's hand. Through the back exit, they rushed to the rear door, but didn't make it. A man in a mask with a gun in hand entered the kitchen. Don't move, he commanded, aiming the weapon at Max. Hands up! Emily froze, recognizing the voice. Even in a mask, even with altered appearance, it was Paul, her ex-husband. Paul, she said calmly, stepping forward. Lower the gun. This won't solve your problems. Shut up, he barked, pulling off the mask. His face was twisted with hatred. You, both of you, you ruined my life, took everything. Job, home, reputation. Now it's my turn. Paul, listen, Max began, unobtrusively pushing Emily behind him. Let's talk like reasonable people. We can fix everything. I'll help you start over. Start over? Paul laughed hysterically. After prison, after everyone knows what a loser I am. No, now you'll pay. Both. He raised the gun and aimed at Max. Emily, without thinking, lunged forward. No. How do you feel about that idea? Emily froze with fork in hand. A child at her age. She's over 40. Don't get scared, Max laughed, noticing her reaction. I'm not saying right now, just I'd like another child from the woman I love. I don't know, Emily admitted honestly. Never thought about it seriously. Paul didn't want kids, and then I decided it was too late. The shot rang out, deafening everyone in the room. Emily felt a strong blow to her shoulder and fell. But she didn't feel pain right away. Only a strange numbness and cold spreading through her body. Emily, Max screamed, rushing to her. God, no! Paul stood frozen with the gun in hand, looking at his ex-wife with some strange expression, not of anger, but confusion, as if he himself didn't believe what he just did. You're to blame yourself, he muttered. Shouldn't have interfered. At that moment, the second guard, hearing the shot, ran into the room with weapon ready. Freeze, he shouted at Paul. Drop the gun. Paul slowly, as in a dream, turned to him. Tears stood in his eyes. I didn't want to, he whispered, and suddenly sharply raised the gun to his temple. Don't, Max managed to shout, but it was too late. The second shot merged with the siren of approaching police cars. Paul's body collapsed to the floor like a broken doll. For Emily, the next hours merged into one endless nightmare of pain, lights, voices, and bustle. Ambulance, hospital, operating room. The last thing she remembered before sinking into anesthetic sleep was Max's face leaning over her and his words, "Hold on, my love, everything will be fine, I promise." Emily woke in the ICU ward. Screens of monitors flickered around, some instruments beeped quietly. Beside the bed, head on his arms, Max slept. He looked exhausted, gaunt face, stubble, red eyes. "Max," Emily called quietly. Her voice sounded like a crow's croak, weak and hoarse. He woke instantly and looked at her tenderly. "Awake?" He smiled happily. "How do you feel?" "Like a train hit me," Emily answered honestly. What happened to Paul?" Max darkened. "He's dead, shot himself in the head right after wounding you. Doctors say he had severe depression, exacerbated after arrest, and everything that happened." Emily closed her eyes, feeling tears stream down her cheeks. How could it go so far? How could an ordinary person turn into a monster capable of murder? "Don't cry." Max gently wiped her tears. "It's not your fault. He chose his path." "Let's not talk about him," Emily suggested softly. "I have good news for you." "What?" Emily smiled weakly. "The bullet went through, didn't hit vital organs. You'll recover. Doctors promise full recovery in a couple months." "That's wonderful," Emily nodded. "And something else." Max clearly hesitated, as if not knowing how to say. "Remember our talk about a child?" "Yes." Emily suddenly tensed. "What?" "When they brought you to the hospital and did all tests, doctors found you're pregnant." "About 4 weeks." Emily froze, not believing her ears. "Pregnant?" she whispered. "But how?" "I mean, I know how, but is it sure?" "Absolutely," Max smiled. "Tests don't lie. You're carrying our child, Emily." "And the shot? The operation? Did it harm?" "No," Max calmed her. "The baby's fine. Doctors say he's holding on tight to life just like his mom." Emily laughed through tears, unable to believe her happiness. After everything that happened, after all trials, such a gift from fate. "Boy or girl?" she asked. "Too early to tell," Max smiled. "But I somehow feel it'll be a girl, beautiful and smart, like you." "And I think a boy," Emily objected, "strong and noble like his father." They smiled at each other, and Emily thought that maybe all the trials weren't in vain. Maybe this winding path was meant to lead her to true happiness. 5 years later. "Mom, look." Little Valerie, named after Grandma Valerie, held out a drawing. "I drew this. Very beautiful sunshine." Emily smiled, examining the colorful scribbles. "What is it?" "This is our family," the girl announced proudly. "Here's Dad, here's you, here's me, here's Kyle and Dylan, here's our dog Jack." "Wonderful." Emily hugged her daughter. "You're a real artist." "Like Grandma?" Valerie asked seriously. "You said she drew beautifully." "Yes, like Grandma." Emily nodded, recalling her mother-in-law's watercolors they found in the old apartment after her death. Some now hung on the walls of their country house, the same one where the tragedy with Paul happened, but which they decided not to sell anyway. Life must go on, she and Max decided. Can't let fear and pain control you. The house changed, became brighter and cozier. Children's laughter often sounded here now. The twins who graduated college often visited with their girlfriends, and little Valerie grew into a cheerful, curious child. Emily continued working at the bank, but now on a more flexible schedule. 3 days in the office, 2 remote. She didn't want to miss a minute of her daughter's life. Max fully supported her in this. He himself tried to spend as much time as possible with Valerie. Sometimes on quiet evenings when Valerie was asleep and Max worked in the office, Emily went out to the terrace and looked at the stars. She thought about her life, how drastically everything changed over these years. About Paul, who couldn't find his path. About Valerie, whose kindness and wisdom helped her in the hardest times. About Max, who showed her what true love and respect are. What are you pondering? Max came out to the terrace and hugged her from behind by the shoulders. About life, Emily answered simply. About how strangely everything turns out. You know, sometimes I think what I'd say to my old self, that scared woman who washed dishes at her mother-in-law's and feared saying a word against her husband. And what would you say? Max asked with interest. I'd say, hold on, girl, everything will be fine. You're stronger than you think, and one day you'll be truly happy. Max tenderly kissed her temple. You really are strong, the strongest woman I know. I wasn't always. Emily shook her head. But life taught me to fight for myself, for my happiness, for those I love. And was it worth it? Max asked with a smile. Emily turned to him and looked into his eyes, the same eyes that always looked at her with love and respect, never with contempt or anger. Absolutely, she answered and kissed her husband. From the nursery came Valerie's sleepy voice. Mom, Dad, I want water. They exchanged glances and laughed. Coming, sunshine, Emily responded. I'll bring water now. She entered the house, feeling her heart overflow with love and gratitude. Life continued. Beautiful, meaningful life, and no trial seemed in vain, for all led her here to this moment of absolute happiness. And somewhere far in another world, Valerie smiled, looking at her namesake granddaughter, at happy Emily, at loving Max. She knew her legacy was used wisely, not just the jewels, but that main gift she left her daughter-in-law, the ability to forgive, love, and never give up. So from a downtrodden housewife, Emily turned into a successful business lady and happy mother. So Paul found his end, unable to cope with demons of pride and hatred. So little Valerie inherited the best from both families, the strength of spirit of the Warners, and the nobility of the Thomases. And if there's justice in this world, and Emily believed there is, then everyone got what they deserved. And every tear, every moment of despair ultimately led to something bright and real. No wonder they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Emily became living proof of this truth. If you like the story, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. It motivates us to create new and interesting stories every day. Don't miss the new video you'll see on the main screen right now. All the best and be happy.